heart of Blue, Connecticut. Buried somewhere under the wreckage of political correctness. Broadcasting live from the front lines of the resistance. This is the Jayson Veley Program.
From Hiroshima to the Inspector General's report, we'd like to welcome you to this hour of pure, unapologetic conservative talk radio. My name is Dakota Wise. With me, my co-host Connor Wise. We are, of course, the Wise Conservative Show, filling in for Jayson Veley on this Monday, May the 30th. Of course, it's Memorial Day weekend.
We will be back once again on Thursday to fill in for Jayson as well.
Now, to start off the show, I wanted to talk about something that was just purely unbelievable. I couldn't believe that a standing American president, or any American to be honest, but especially the leader of this nation, would go out abroad, go to Japan, and do this sort of thing.
As I'm sure you've all heard, he gave a speech in Hiroshima this past week. We have clips from that speech here for you today.
Take a listen.
Cloudless morning. Death fell from the sky, and the world was changed. A flash of light and a wall of fire destroyed a city and demonstrated that mankind possessed the means to destroy itself. Why do we come to this place?
Good question.
To Hiroshima. We come to ponder a terrible force unleashed in a not-so-distant past. We come to mourn the dead, including over 100,000 Japanese men, women, and children.
We come to mourn the dead. Over 100,000 Japanese men, women, and children. Notice nowhere in this speech does he mention the hundreds of thousands of Americans who lost their lives in order to defend our freedom, not only our freedom, but the freedom of people around the world. It seems the president has forgotten just how terrible Japan was treating not just their POWs, but also the innocent civilians that they went into China and absolutely obliterated villages, doing unspeakable things. The president seems apologetic, though. And I'd play more of that clip, but it goes on for nearly 20 minutes. Even though he never once says the words apology, there's no doubt that it was an apology.
What really makes this worse, not only because he is basically apologizing, but this is on Memorial Day weekend.
Instead of being here at home, mourning the loss of Americans who have lost their freedom, destroying evil, tyrannical regimes across the world, defending liberty, he's out in Japan, apologizing for saving hundreds, if not close to 1 million American lives that many historians, most historians as a matter of fact, agree it would have cost America if we had to invade Japan.
Invading mainland Japan would have cost so many more lives, and I am not sorry that we did this. I might sound a little harsh. I don't know, us conservatives often sound harsh because of this, but I am definitely not apologetic for saving thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives.
It's as simple as this. Our two countries were at war. It was not our fault. President Obama went on later in that speech to say that both countries had equal responsibility in the war. It was not our fault. We did not ask Japan to bomb us. We did not put our men in Pearl Harbor and say, hey, Japan, we want to enter the war. And you know, what's absolutely shocking is that I've seen all sorts of liberal craziness. But in the comment sections for the speech, there were people defending Japan and their need to attack Pearl Harbor.
I've seen that a lot too, actually. I've seen a lot of comments on a bunch of different things, saying that we forced Japan to attack us secretly, that we forced them to make this cowardly move.
As it stands, the United States has never had to pull a move like that. When we go to war with someone, we declare, well, I'd say we declare war, but not so much. They know we're coming is the thing. We haven't had to pull this whole, we're going to surprise you. No, okay? It was a cowardly move. It was not forced. There is never... You're never forced to go to war. And Japan knew exactly what they were getting into. They weren't a helpless child. They knew they risked angering the might of the United States.
Let's not forget that we are in the middle of diplomatic talks with Japan at the time of the attack.
There were 2 diplomats in D.C., and if I recall correctly, they might have actually been meeting with Roosevelt the day that Hiroshima happened.
I think they might have.
I recall they walked out maybe or something like that. There's history there. And as it stands, we were in diplomatic negotiations, and Japan backstabbed us in a cowardly move, and we ended up winning the war. I will not apologize for saving American life. So, Mr. President, you do not speak for me, and you do not speak for a large portion of Americans.
I am still waiting for the day that the Japanese president or emperor, whatever he is now, the day when he comes to Pearl Harbor and apologizes for cowardly attacking us.
The Japanese prime minister still refuses to even visit the site, let alone give a 20-minute speech in which he disgraces his entire nation and himself, making himself look like an utter fool.
This is just another example of President Barack Obama proving that he does not care about the same values that America was founded on, that he doesn't care about our veterans or those who died in our wars.
And what's utterly disgraceful is that this wasn't his only show of his inability to deal with foreign relations last week. Of course, last week he made some snide comments about Donald Trump to the rest of the world leaders. And I'm sorry. Clearly, he's not a Donald Trump fan. But when you go abroad and you're representing the nation, you leave your internal politics internally. Once you cross the border, it is not Democratic, you're not Republican, you're just American. You don't bring your internal politics out and start making bad comments about someone who very well could be the next leader of this nation.
President Obama didn't really think about that when he said foreign leaders are rattled of Donald Trump being a possible president.
At this point, is it even really bad that foreign leaders are rattled? I think they're rattled due to the fact that so many countries have gotten away with so much with against the United States. Look at Iran, look at North Korea, look at ISIS.
Look at Russia.
All these nations have taken advantage of the weak foreign position that Barack Obama has taken. And so, yeah, they're probably a little bit rattled at someone who's talking a bit harsher against them.
Well, that's exactly what we need, though. See, President Barack Obama, when he said this, he was trying to make it seem like the world doesn't want Donald Trump, which I'm sure a lot of countries don't because they are our enemies. But we need a strong leader.
And quite frankly, I don't care what other countries want in their leaders.
No, we're America. We're not those other countries.
People need to realize that there is a split between the United States and Europe and the rest of the world. We do not need to be like Europe. We do not want to be like Europe.
We were fundamentally founded on completely different principles than the rest of these countries. Why should we now change everything we ever were about in order to become the same as these nations?
Yet that is exactly the transition we see this country going through. And what is absolutely appalling is that Barack Obama was not the only person making a fool of himself over the Memorial Day weekend. Of course, across the nation, several sites dedicated to honoring fallen veterans who gave their all to protect our freedom were just cowardly. I don't know how else to put it, but cowardly vandalized by people who clearly have utterly no regard for human life or for the sacrifices that were made in order to protect them.
This weekend in Venice, California, an unknown vandal painted all over the names on a MIA memorial for Vietnam soldiers. Now, LAPD, since this is within their jurisdiction, they have been quoted to say they are not actively investigating this scene.
Now, what I find utterly disgusting about acts like this is that you don't need to agree with the war, you don't need to agree with the politics, but you don't disrespect veterans, and you don't disrespect the men who died fighting those wars.
It doesn't matter whether this war was a mistake or not. These soldiers laid down their lives so that you and I can have the freedoms that we now have.
Exactly. It's utterly disgusting. And furthermore, in Henderson, Kentucky, a man driving a '79 Ford Thunderbird drove through a park display which had over 160 crosses dedicated to all the men and women, I suppose, all the men and women who have died serving their country for that particular town. And I think it goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War even.
Yes.
Now, this is the very same park that had taken heat before because all of the fallen lives were represented by crosses, and liberals had to so point out that perhaps they weren't all Christian.
It's just despicable the way they look at this, and all they think about is a political statement.
It seems the left can't differentiate between a political statement and a kind gesture towards people. No one is forcing you to become a Christian when they display a Christian cross, yet it seems that liberals will be offended by the littlest show of Christianity anywhere.
They don't want to see... I'm sure a lot of these people were Christians. It's the major religion in our country.
We're over 70% Christian,
yeah.
Believe it or not.
But the liberals, they don't want people to know that. They don't want these soldiers represented in a kind gesture the way that they were. And so all of these different acts that they have come out and done, it's despicable. I don't know any other way to describe it. It's despicable.
I've become more and more convinced that it's not a large portion of the Democratic Party that's like this. I think it's a very vocal minority who is very loud at what they do. Because there's absolutely no way that there is, 100 and some million plus Americans who feel the same way like this. There's no way that everyone can be offended by the littlest thing like this, or the nation just wouldn't function. I really think it must be a small select group of people who feel that they take offense to everything done like this.
And they make sure to let their opinion known time after time, whether it be a Donald Trump rally or just a memorial for veterans.
It's has to be stopped at some point. This is the craziness in the nation is getting ridiculous. We'll have more on that craziness coming up next with the GOP convention. Is unity coming? Well, who really cares? More next. This is the Jayson Veley program.
Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
Hi everyone, Jayson Veley here with an exclusive clip from youthrevolt.org. I'll be back in just a few moments. If we want to fully restore this country, it's going to require what I often call a revolution of the heart and mind. We have to reach out to people and change minds on unprecedented levels. And it's going to be extremely difficult considering the power of this federal government. But damn it, it's a battle worth having, isn't it?
8 years with Obama, and now no one knows what bathroom to use.
The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
Hi, everybody. This week, I want to make sure that you're aware of a group of young people that are out to reverse my fundamental transformation of America. This organization is called Youth Revolt. And before I go any further, I must urge folks not to visit youthrevolt.org. Now, Michelle and I, we're both gravely concerned that if this group succeeds, our children may not grow up to see the Marxist country that we will hopefully one day become. And so I repeat, do not visit youthrevolt.org. And remember, I've got a pen. and I've got a phone. And I will use them if I have to. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday nights, for a conservative outlook on pop culture and American politics. Together we can reinstitute values back into our nation's young people and help create an alternative path away from the mainstream liberal agenda. Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights, only on Youth Revolt.
Hey, little boy, you want some free college?
Bernie Sanders, that creepy uncle your mom warned you about. The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
The idea behind Youth Revolt is to let them, these liberal professors, let them know that we are here and we're ready to fight.
Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Jayson Veley program. Dakota and Connor Wise of the Wise Conservative Show are in for Jayson Veley. As promised, we've got more news on the GOP convention and who exactly is not going to be there.
Well, a lot of past GOP presidential nominees, as well as some senior figures within the GOP, are currently refusing to attend this convention.
Of all the living Republican nominees and presidents, past presidents that are still alive, reports are saying that Bob Dole, of all people, is the only one who is going to attend the convention, and even then he's just going to be there for a short time to do with something with his law firm and a luncheon. It appears that pretty much Trump has none of the support of past GOP leaders.
A lot of media centers, the news, of course, is saying that this is definitely going to hurt Donald Trump. But I don't necessarily agree with that. Do you?
Well, not exactly, because let's actually look at how Trump has organized his campaign run. He has distanced himself as far from the establishment as possible. That was his whole starting platform, was that he was not the establishment. And so I really find it hard to believe that senior GOP leaders not supporting Donald Trump is really going to have much sway with the general voting base.
The fact is, all of Donald Trump's supporters, or I would say the majority, are also anti-establishment. These senior GOP figures, these establishment figures, are not going to help Donald Trump whatsoever. His followers do not care about them, and they do not care on whether they're at the convention.
More and more this election cycle, I have become convinced that endorsements really mean nothing to most people.
Oh, I agree, definitely.
Endorsements seem rather useless. Maybe some of the independent voters or the undecided voters might be swayed a little bit by an endorsement, but I really don't. I don't think that they have the sort of power that they used to have.
Speaking of endorsements, though, recently Marco Rubio said that he would put his support behind Donald Trump.
Of course, this is a huge, huge reversal from the really nasty comments that were said about Marco Rubio, and of course Marco Rubio firing back earlier in the election.
Rubio, he just said that he just wants to help. He's been kind of out of the picture for a very long time. No one's really heard anything about him since he dropped out.
He has also said, however, that he is not interested in being Donald Trump's VP pick. Of course, Donald Trump's VP pick still remains a mystery. No one really knows who or what direction he's really going to go in choosing a vice president.
His campaign staff has actually said that he's going to pick that soon. So we'll keep our ears open for that.
It'll be interesting if we know who the vice president is going to be before we get to the convention.
Oh, definitely. I really hope we see it before that convention rolls around, just because I really want to see what he's thinking.
He put out a very excellent list of Supreme Court justices. Whether or not you believe the guy is actually conservative, his list was it was a good list of conservative justices that I would be happy to see. So it'd be interesting if he once again appeals to the actual conservative voter base, and if he's maybe trying to make amends with the Ted Cruz faction that still refuses to support Donald Trump.
But there's also other factions that are refusing to support Donald Trump, Romney being one of them. He's continuing to try and push to have an independent candidate.
Now, of course, an independent candidate would basically guarantee a Hillary Clinton victory in the fall.
Now, if we look at this, if there was an independent candidate, it would split the conservative vote, basically in half.
And as it stands, there's more at stake in this election cycle than just the presidency for the next 4 to 8 years. In the grand scheme of things, that's rather inconsequential. But what is very, very important is that the next president will likely get to decide many of the next justices, probably 2 or 3 justices, all of which are conservative and all of which are getting very old.
So we definitely have a very important election here. The next president is going to appoint these and basically decide on whether the Supreme Court holds up the Constitution or whether it goes towards the liberal beliefs and doesn't care about the Constitution whatsoever.
The Supreme Court is the nation's last chance to return to an actual constitutional republic. It's our last chance. If the Supreme Court moves towards the progressive side of the scale and President Obama's illegal executive actions are allowed to stand, we set a very dangerous precedent for the president being able to not just execute the law, but also legislate it when he feels that something needs to be done and Congress won't do it.
Now we can see that this will directly kill out the conservative movement, basically, as we won't be able to get anything done, not only in Congress, but anywhere. The Supreme Court will just throw it out.
As it stands, the Supreme Court has become so politicized, so Democrat versus Republican, we really cannot, for the sake of the nation, if the Supreme Court goes liberal, you can basically kiss the conservative movement goodbye. The conservative movement would be killed for decades. And by the time the Supreme Court had a chance of swifting back towards the conservative movement, the United States would not represent the United States we know and love.
No, we wouldn't have any of these rights, our Second Amendment right, even our First Amendment right, maybe. And we would just be another one of those European nations that they keep continually to try and make us turn to.
Of course, Hillary Clinton is a fond supporter of a progressive Supreme Court. She has insisted that Barack Obama, of all people, a president who can't even follow the Constitution himself, would make an excellent Supreme Court justice. And it's really interesting seeing that Hillary Clinton is suggesting who should be deciding what's legal and illegal in the nation, as she's under several federal investigations from her email scandals to the Clinton Foundation.
She continues to claim that she did nothing wrong when there are multiple reports that say she might have.
This past week, of course, we saw the Inspector's General report come out in which it found Hillary Clinton at fault and found her negligent in her use of a private email server which contained what we know to be now hundreds of classified emails, even, I believe, several dozen of the highest classification.
Yeah.
The list of wrongdoings under Hillary Clinton in the State Department is exhaustive. It's huge.
It's growing every day, honestly.
Now, of course, the Queen Bee herself had to comment on the Inspector General report. Take a listen.
Well, there may be reports that come out, but nothing has changed. It's the same story.
Yeah, and that story is that you did so much wrong.
I like how she calls it a story and not the truth. I really like to analyze what exactly the wording these politicians use. Notice she said a story, not the truth, because we all know the truth is that she's 100% at fault.
Just like previous secretaries of state, I used a personal email.
And everyone in the past who has done this has been found guilty.
Many people did. It was not at all unprecedented.
That doesn't mean it's legal. A lot of people do crack. It's not unprecedented, but that doesn't make it right.
I have turned over all of my emails. No one else can say that. I have been in...
Except for the several thousand emails that just so mysteriously went missing. Right, that's all the emails except them.
Incredibly open about doing that. I will continue to be open, and it's not an issue that is going to affect either the campaign or my presidency.
Except it 100% is an issue that will affect both her campaign and her presidency, and none other than Bernie Sanders, her Democratic challenger, is in fact making that an issue that will be brought up in the Democratic nomination process. Over this past weekend, in a huge reversal, every time I say huge, it has to be Donald Trump huge reversal of Bernie Sanders from the first Democratic debate, where he urged the American people to move on from the emails. Well, now that he actually sort of thought he had a chance of winning, he's gone on kind of a winning streak a little bit.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot of momentum recently.
He has the momentum right now. It was a little bit too little too late. I think Hillary Clinton is within 80 delegates.
Less than that, I believe.
She's close. Still doesn't have it secured, though. But in a reversal, the gloves have come off, and Bernie Sanders is urging the American people in order to take a look at the Inspector General's report and question whether someone who displayed so much negligence with American intel should be trusted to lead the country.
I really feel that he should have done this so much longer ago.
I think he's regretting the choice, and now he's kind of wiggling it back in.
Yeah, he's trying to get this last push, this last-ditched effort, because he really wants to convince those superdelegates to come over to him.
Why this is important? This is helping the Republican Party more than it's helping Bernie Sanders, because he has a very, very devout and loyal group of people who will vote for Bernie Sanders, and that's just about it.
In some exit polls, up to 30% of Bernie supporters said they would not vote for Hillary, and they would vote for Trump instead.
So why this is important is that if Bernie Sanders is bringing up just how crooked Hillary actually is, there's a large portion of the Democratic voter base that will not vote for her because of how inept and how crooked they view her to be.
You know, a lot of the news media reports that the Republican Party is extremely divided, but if we actually look at it, the Democratic Party is just as, if not more, divided than us right now.
I've actually been surprised. More or less, the Republican Party has consolidated around Donald Trump. Of course, there's still people that don't like him, but I think as the election cycle goes on, people will realize that they don't like Hillary Clinton a whole lot more.
I really feel like that's happening already.
So the Republican Party is not as in bad a place as people thought it was. In fact, I kind of see the momentum swinging towards us. Donald Trump is ahead of Hillary Clinton in all the latest polls. Of course, the campaigning hasn't exactly started yet, but this isn't the blowout people thought it was going to be.
Oh, no, people thought that Hillary was going to beat Donald by upwards of 20 points. But now, if he's even behind in any polls, it's by a couple, 2-3 points.
And why Donald Trump stands such an excellent chance is that he has energized so many voters. He's brought in so many new voters to the Republican Party. Of course, voter turnout in Republican primaries has been up past, I think pretty much every state has broken records. Meanwhile, the Democratic voter turnout has been, I think, lower than 2012.
Yeah.
So while the Republican Party, a large portion of it is feeling energized by Donald Trump, The Democratic voter base just doesn't see a need to turn out, and this comes down to the simple philosophy of how Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are basing their platform. Hillary Clinton is running on the prospect that she is inevitable. Kind of a tongue twister.
Yeah, I'm glad you got it there.
She's inevitable, and that doesn't bring people out to vote. It doesn't spark energy.
Now, if we actually look at it, that's the exact campaign that Jeb Bush was trying to run on. It does not work. People don't want the inevitable candidate. They want the candidate that came out of nowhere, the dark horse candidate, that just takes America by surprise.
America loves a good underdog.
That she does.
So, getting back on topic, we drifted a little bit. Bernie Sanders, back to the crazy old guy. Bernie Sanders is just now calling the Democratic primary process rigged. Now, of course, we all know it's rigged. The superdelegates are a complete joke.
But that's not what he's calling rigged. Bernie Sanders is saying that the whole system is rigged because not every single primary is an open primary, meaning you don't have to be a Democrat to vote in it.
So, here's the problem. He should have been talking about this 6 months ago when the primary process was starting. Right now, he's playing the game. He already signed up to play the rules. He knew what the rules were ahead of time, and he didn't say anything until he started to get close to winning towards the end.
Just like with the Hillary email scandal, he's talking about it way too late. He didn't take the initiative in all of this.
It's kind of sad to see. He's gaining momentum. I have no doubt that if he had started out like this from the beginning, he likely would have been the nominee.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, he's won the last 10 states, I think.
Yeah.
Even when he lost by 5 votes, which is miraculous, seeing as Hillary Clinton is the inevitable one.
She didn't really expect him to gain this momentum. If he had played on the same tactic that he is using now, he definitely would have taken more of America by surprise, as we were talking about. America loves that. And he could have come out the nominee.
Too little, too late seems to be the song of Bernie Sanders. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the liberal media back at it again, inducing bias into what should have been a pretty straightforward story. And then we'll talk about the states that are pushing back against illegal executive actions by Obama. All that ahead next on the JCV program.
Red States Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
Hi everyone, Jayson Veley here with an exclusive clip from youthrevolt.org. I'll be back in just a few moments. If we want to fully restore this country, it's going to require what I often call a revolution of the Harvard mind. We have to reach out to people and change minds on unprecedented levels. And it's going to be extremely difficult considering the power of this federal government. But damn it, it's a battle worth having, isn't it?
8 years with Obama, and now no one knows what bathroom to use.
The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
Hi, everybody. This week, I want to make sure that you're aware of a group of young people that are out to reverse my fundamental transformation of America. This organization is called Youth Revolt. And before I go any further, I must urge folks not to visit youthrevolt.org. Now, Michelle and I, we're both gravely concerned that if this group succeeds, our children may not grow up to see the Marxist country that we will hopefully one day become. And so I repeat, do not visit youthrevolt.org. And remember, I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I will use them if I have to. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday nights, for a conservative outlook on pop culture and American politics. Together we can reinstitute values back into our nation's young people and help create an alternative path away from the mainstream liberal agenda. Tune in to Millennials Rise at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights, only on Youth Revolt.
Hey, little boy, you want some free college?
Bernie Sanders, that creepy uncle your mom warned you about. The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
The idea behind Youth Revolt is to let them, these liberal professors, let them know that we are here and we're ready to fight.
Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
Listening to the Jayson Veley program. This is Dakota and Connor Wise of the Wise Conservative Show, in for Jayson Veley. As promised, we have the liberal media back at doing what they do best, and that's including bias into every news story.
So on Friday, the family of Kate Steinle, if you remember correctly, she was shot and killed by an illegal alien who had been deported 5 times in San Francisco. Well, the family, they filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the federal government, San Francisco, and San Francisco's former sheriff.
What's important about this story is that San Francisco is, of course, one of those illegal sanctuary cities where illegals can go and have absolutely no ramifications for breaking the law.
Now, where the media comes into this is CNN, of all news agencies. They had a headline about this new lawsuit that read, Kate Steinle's family files lawsuit after her death on a San Francisco pier last summer. Now, this caption does not mention whatsoever anything about how she died, of course, being murdered by an illegal alien.
Of course, the story totally neglects the true facts behind the death.
Now, if you didn't even know what this story was, which I'm sure there are a lot of Americans that don't, you would think that she just mysteriously died on a pier, that it wasn't a murder by someone who should have been deported.
Or who had been deported 5 times, but was being allowed to live in one of these sanctuary cities.
It's the things like this, these little details that the liberal media continues to do that shows bias within everything that they do.
You'll notice it. Just look at the headlines next time you see any sort of shooting. It will include the words black man shot by white man, or anything like that. If it has to do with any sort of race other than white, they will include the details. But when it's the other way around, they'll conveniently forget them, because apparently reverse racism isn't a thing.
Well, I don't think it's reverse racism, it's just racism.
But as it stands, the liberal media, that doesn't fit into their objective in order to vilify white men, pretty much. White, straight, Christian men have pretty much become the enemy of the nation, or at least the liberals have put them in their crosshairs.
Yeah, they continue to do this within everything. They continue to let illegals, or as they call them, undocumented workers or laborers, and they continue to leave them out of headlines so that they don't look like they're at fault.
As it stands, they are here illegally. They should not be here. They should not be able to stay here and not fear being deported. I don't care why they're coming here, to be honest. Of course, the United States offers a better place to live than probably 90% of the rest of the world. Of course. That doesn't mean you get here illegally. We're a nation based on laws, and if you have to break the law to get here, number 1, that makes you illegal. You're not undocumented. You're illegal. Number 2, it totally devalues the process that those who are here legally went through in order to become actual United States citizens.
As far as I'm concerned, these sanctuary cities, as they're called, they shouldn't be allowed to exist. There's so many of them within California.
It's 100% illegal.
Yeah. They should not be able to harbor these criminals, these murderers, and these rapists.
As bad as it sounds, though, some of the states, they're not taking it. 11 states, including Texas, Alabama, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Utah, and Georgia, the governor of Maine, and several other schools across the nation have filed a lawsuit against President Obama and his directives in order to require schools to allow boys to use the girls' locker room, and vice versa, of course. These states aren't having it with these illegal actions.
Now, let's not forget that Obama is also threatening to cut all funding, which includes having free lunches for those who cannot afford it, to these schools if they do this.
Of course, the federal government is doing what they do best, and that's blackmailing the states with funding. The 10th Amendment in this country has 100% been forgotten.
Once again, we see that the left is ignoring the fact that President Barack Obama is a president and not a dictator. He has checks and balances. He does not have every single power that exists.
And I want you to look at the headlines again, going on with this liberal bias. Look at the headlines. You'll see something along the lines of these states are trying to exclude transgender students. It doesn't have anything, they don't mention anything to do with the fact that Barack Obama is taking illegal steps and trying to legislate. It doesn't mention anywhere that what Barack Obama is trying to do is illegal. Instead, they'll pull out these states are being homophobic, they're being transphobic, whatever they want to call it. It won't say anywhere that these states might just have a problem with the fact that Barack Obama is going around what was written in the Constitution.
Now, I don't care whether you agree with this, with allowing transgenders into these bathrooms or not. You should be angered at the fact that Obama is going around his normal means to do this. He's picking up the phone and the pen, as he said, and he's going around the legal route, as he has continued to do throughout his entire presidency.
States are starting to push back, though. We're seeing more and more lawsuits filed against Obama's illegal executive actions, and there's no doubt in anyone's mind. This is 100% against the Constitution. The president was never meant to be able to legislate. In the past 2 or 3 decades, we have seen the president's power grow exponentially.
Oh, definitely. And it's not the fact that he is using executive actions, basically. He's using them in an illegal way, though. It's how he's using them. He can use them for the little things that just don't really need to, go through Congress.
A national holiday.
Yeah. But he should not be using it for passing entire acts that force high schools to allow men into women's bathrooms and vice versa.
Of course, this is nothing other than Barack Obama's war against women. Who in their right mind is okay with men using a woman's bathroom? I'm sorry, but if I had a daughter and I saw a man walk into the bathroom behind my daughter, that would not be okay.
No, they don't look at that, though. They don't realize that men are, and they already have, taking advantage of this, perverts are, and going in and molesting these little children.
It's simple. It's really simple. Pull out your driver's license. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So right there it says male or female. You see, whichever sex it says on your driver's license, that's the bathroom you use. If you want to go have a surgery, do whatever you want. I'm not going to stop you. But until you are legally labeled a female, get the hell out of the ladies' bathroom.
Exactly.
All right, so shifting gears a little bit, let's go ahead and talk about the military spending in the U.S. It is Memorial Day. Seems a little bit fitting.
Yeah.
Talk about the military spending in the U.S. and why the left's war on the military is really a little bit unjustified.
So, as we all know, the left continues to say that we spend way too much on our military and continues to tell Obama to lower the budget. But if we actually look at the facts, we spend approximately 3.5% of our GDP on the military. Now, compare that to Russia. Russia spends 4.7% of their GDP on their military.
So we're not spending the highest GDP percentage?
No, definitely not.
So you're telling me that perhaps we're just a large nation and that's why we spend a large amount of money?
Exactly.
So, but proportionally, we don't spend the most.
No.
So this is more lies coming out of the left.
As we always see.
So, another thing to keep in mind here. Our military is involved in operations worldwide that benefit not just the United States, but countries all across the world. Whether we're fighting piracy off the coast of Africa, or we are always the first foreign entity on the scene of a natural disaster, tsunamis, earthquakes, whatever. Our Navy, our Coast Guard, we're always the first people there to help coordinate a relief effort with the local experts. We're always there. We don't just benefit the United States. We are there to truly help the rest of the world. No other nation in the world can really say that their army does as much good as ours does.
And quite honestly, it's worth it. We might spend a lot of money, but let's look at proportion. It's not that much proportion, and even that money that we do spend goes to a great cause.
Furthermore, you can't make a direct comparison across how much dollars we're spending, because here in the United States, which is where most of our military tech is made, you can't outsource building F-22s to China. We don't get as much for our dollar as other countries get.
Oh no, it's a very expensive place here to do business.
Countries like China can spend a fraction of what we spend and get a very similar product because they don't have things like minimum wage. They don't have things like human rights. So they're able to spend less and get more. And that's just how it works, okay? The United States is an expensive place to do business. So dollar for dollar, you can't really make a direct comparison without factoring in things like how much laborers in China or Russia make compared to how much laborers in the United States or China make, or the United States make. There you go.
Yeah.
So you can't make that direct comparison. Dollar-wise, sure, we might spend more, but that doesn't mean, number one, that it's a larger percentage of our economy, and number two, it does not mean that we're building up this huge military. We're spending what we need to have an effective military, or we were before Obama went through and dismantled our ability to defend ourselves.
Now, when we actually have that full-fledged military that we had before Obama, we led the world. We led the world to much better things.
Ever since Barack Obama has taken charge, he has had this notion that the United States military is almost like an evil force. He has pretty much dismantled the military. He's purged out generals who disagreed with him. Our military budget has shrunk by almost 25%, I believe, since 2011. We continue to see the military shrink. And as though the United States has become a follower, not a leader, the world has pretty much dived into chaos.
I can't remember any time recently where the world wasn't afraid of terrorism.
The fear of terrorism is at an all-time high since 9/11. Never before have we seen a group like ISIS that has been able to terrorize the world, yet we know exactly where they are. They're not hiding in caves like Al-Qaeda. They're not in, houses, hidden houses like the Taliban. We know exactly where ISIS is. Never before have we seen a force of evil like ISIS not be wiped from the face of the earth after repeated attacks against Western nations.
Not only is it terrorism taking an all-new high, but countries such as North Korea and Iran, they're suddenly getting cocky and doing different things that they shouldn't be doing.
From capturing of our Navy sailors to testing of illegal missiles, illegal hydrogen bombs, supposed hydrogen bombs, launching rockets that have written death to Israel on the side of them. The rogue nations like North Korea and Iran have 100% become emboldened by the lack of foreign policy or the weak foreign policy that Barack Obama has adopted during his stay in the White House.
There's no getting around the fact that the world has become much more unsafe under President Barack Obama's presidency. There's no getting around that fact.
The world is a safer place when the United States takes charge and takes command. I don't care what you're looking at, a sports team, offices, the workplace, wherever. You're always going to have leaders, people who step up and get the job done. Right now, the world doesn't have any sort of leader. We're all floundering around wondering what to do. No one has stepped up and done what needs to get done. Historically, the United States has been that leader.
Ever since World War I, we were that leader.
The world has always looked to the United States for strength and for someone who is able to defend the core values that much of the world is based upon.
But we're not that leader anymore.
President Barack Obama has ensured that the United States is no longer a leader in the world. The United States is no longer respected across the world. People laugh at us.
Oh, all the time, all the time.
It's really gotten to the point where it's really bad. And it's sad to see the United States in such a place, and the world is suffering because of it. The United States needs to once again take its place at the top, and we need to ensure that the world is led once again because it makes it a safer place. We can't sit around waiting and hoping for a league of Arab nations to take charge. We've seen that the Iraq military is struggling to take back just single cities from ISIS.
Yeah.
The United States military could go in and have ISIS defeated within a year, without a doubt.
And this is why this election is very important, folks. We can see that Hillary Clinton has said that she will continue President Barack Obama's legacy. We can't allow that to happen, because when the United States does not lead, the world is unsafe. And she will not lead the world like a Republican would.
But what about Bernie Sanders? He would make an excellent commander-in-chief.
Of course. He would definitely make it more socialist, I could say.
Everyone, officers, the president, privates, they all make the same amount of money.
$15.
$15 an hour. And we're going to fight global warming with the United States military.
Because that's our biggest threat.
What a joke. The Democratic Party has become a joke. They're laughing at us, but they're really, the funny thing is that they really don't see how pathetic their party has gotten.
They really don't notice that they're going after the wrong enemies. And that's global warming and the Republicans.
You cannot have a group of people in office who refuses to utter the words radical jihadism. If you cannot name the enemy, how can you fight the enemy?
But time after time, we have seen everyone within the Democrat Party refuse to utter those words.
It's not hard, okay? All of ISIS is radical jihadists. There's no exceptions. There's no one else. There's no radical Christians joining ISIS. It is 100% the radical jihadists. If you can't name the enemy, you certainly don't deserve to be the president and commander-in-chief. Folks, that just about wraps up this episode of the Jayson Veley program. My name is, of course, Dakota Wise. With me, my co-host of the Wise Conservative Show, Connor Wise. We'll be back here Thursday for one more episode while Jayson is off, I believe, celebrating his graduation.
Yeah, he just graduated college.
So when he gets back, be sure to give him a big congratulations. That's a huge milestone, of course. Until next time, folks, my name is Dakota Wise. With me is Connor Wise. This is the Jayson Veley program. Good night, and God bless.